On a road 2 days from King's Landing, Lord Borros Baratheon leads the last charge of the war. It fails. The River Lord who reaches him calls on him to yield. "I'd sooner dance in hell than wear your chains." 7 days later, at Storm's End, his widow bears the son he will never see. He is Lord Paramount of the Stormlands from his first breath. Her husband had left her one instruction. If the child was a boy, he was to be named Aegon, for the king. She names him Royce, for her own father. His army is dead on that road. Her castle has never fallen to siege or storm, and her first act as its master is to set aside the one thing he asked of her. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is After the Dance, the True History. Episode 3, The Widow Fares. Before we begin, one small thing. If you love these histories, give this one a like and subscribe. Every like tells us you love what we are doing. Every subscriber helps us grow, and that is what keeps us creating. And if you want to explore this world beyond these episodes, our app, Westeros Within, is out on iPhone, iPad, and Android. Every episode travels with you, alongside illustrated books that read themselves aloud, the codex holding every house and family tree, hundreds of wallpapers, and the new Atlas, a map of Westeros where every castle opens into its own story. You will find the links to download it in the description below. Now, to the Widow Fares. Last week, the realm married 2 children on a hill and called it healing. That was the ceremony. Tonight is the bill. It is the year 131 after Aegon's conquest. The dragons that fought this war are dead. The war is over, and there is one man in Westeros who will not have it. Cregan Stark deployed Winterfell. He marched an army the length of the country for a war that finished before he could reach it. And what he found waiting was a boy on a throne, a court full of the men who had put him there, and a peace he did not believe in for a moment. So he named 3 castles: Storm's End, Casterly Rock, Oldtown, the seats of the 3 houses that had carried the green cause furthest, and the 3 he intended to burn on his way home. Understand what that meant in ordinary words: 3 more sieges, 3 more winters of it, paid for by people who were never asked which side they were on, in a country that had already been fought over for years. That is the hour. 1 man with an army, 3 castles, and a question nobody in that city could agree on. Do you finish a war, or do you end it? 3 castles had not bowed. That is how Cregan Stark saw it, and it was true when he arrived. But it was already out of his hands, and he did not know it yet. Before the Northmen ever reached the city, in the weeks the chroniclers would later call the False Dawn, Lord Corlys Velaryon had sent terms to all 3. Casterly Rock, Oldtown, Storm's End. He was not the Hand. He was not a regent. There were no regents yet. He was an old man who had sat on the losing council of a dead king, and he sent word anyway. And what he sent was not a pardon. It was the promise of one. Accept the boy on the throne, and the crown will forgive what you did in the war. Take that, and the fighting stops at your gate. Refuse it, and there is a wolf in King's Landing who will come and finish the argument. Cregan Stark knew those terms had gone out. He let them go, because he was not waiting for 3 castles to say yes. He was waiting for them to say no. Start with the one that said no. Oldtown, the richest city in Westeros, and the seat of a house that had put more men in the field for the Greens than anyone alive. Their lord had died at Tumbleton the year before. The son who inherited was 15. Lord Lionel Hightower did not wait. The terms came to him in his maester's hand, and the histories say he tore the parchment out of it, ripped it to shreds, and swore he would write his answer in the sea snake's blood. Then something changed his mind, and the chroniclers hand us two different somethings. Mushroom, the fool, and the least trustworthy witness in these histories, says it was a woman. Lady Samantha Tarley had been married to his father. She was now the boy's own, and Mushroom has her promising to marry him if he made the peace. Grand Maester Munkun gives a colder reason, and it is the kind a maester notices. The Tyrells had stopped sitting the war out, and Lionel Hightower's youngest brother was at Highgarden, a boy in service at another lord's table, well-dressed, pouring wine. Every ward, Munkun writes, is also a hostage. Neither man rules the other out. A boy that age can be pulled by a woman in his own hall and pushed by a brother he cannot get back, both at once, and never be able to say afterwards which one moved him. Oldtown accepted. Storm's End had already said yes. The histories give two reasons for it. The host that marched away with her husband had been broken and had not come back, and the newborn in her arms was the future of House Baratheon. Lady Elenda Baratheon, Lady of Storm's End, and Lady Regent for a son who could not yet lift his head. Her price was her daughters. 3 of them rode for King's Landing as hostages of the crown. The 4th had already gone to the Silent Sisters. A white cloak of the King's Guard rode with them. So did their grandfather. So did the princess who had sheltered behind those walls through the whole war, going back to the capital now to be married. The eldest of the 3 was Cassandra. The dead king had agreed to take her to wife and had said she would give him strong sons. The histories say she wept bitterly when she learned that the king had died and that she would not be a queen. Her mother did not go. Not to the capital, not to the coronation, not with her own children. She was still weak from the birth, and she stayed behind her walls. So the picture the record actually leaves us is riders going out through a gate nobody had ever forced, and one woman watching them go, which leaves Casterly Rock. And Casterly Rock did not surrender. It negotiated. The year before, the Ironborn had come. Dalton Greyjoy, called the Red Kraken, took 3/4 of the Lannister fleet in its own harbors and sank the rest, swarmed the walls of Lannisport, sacked the city, and carried off more than 600 women and girls to be salt wives and thralls. The Lord of Casterly Rock was already dead by then, killed at a river crossing in a battle his own side won. His widow barred the gates and held the rock. Lady Johanna Lannister, ruling for a son too young to hold a sword, and she had been considered that same season for the regency of the realm itself. Her answer to the peace terms was not an acceptance. It was an invoice. Order the Red Kraken back to his islands. Free Fair Isle. Give back every woman he took. And then she did the thing this whole hour has no equal for. Her husband's twin brother was Sir Tyland Lannister. At the start of the war, he had split the crown's treasury and hidden it. And when the queen's men took him, they wanted to know where. They tortured him blind for it and gelded him, and he never told them. Afterwards, he took to wearing a hood of silk. Johanna Lannister bought him back with the Westerland's share of that same gold. She paid the ransom out of the treasure he had been maimed for refusing to give up, and the blinded man went east to the capital and became Hand of the King. Her one condition, the crown tried to keep. The order went out, give the women back. He sent back a single line, only the drowned god may sunder the bond between a man and his salt wives. He stayed. He burned her new shipyards and carried off another 100 women, and Fair Isle was never recovered. She kept her word and got nothing for it. Inside a year she was in mail herself, in the field, riding out against him. 3 castles, a boy, a widow with a newborn, and a widow with a child. Every one of them took the terms, and 2 of those 3 left a price in the record. Storm's End paid in daughters. Casterly Rock named a term the crown could not keep. The one that said no left nothing at all. No clause, no cost, no bargain. The histories tell us Lionel Hightower refused, and then tell us he did not. What it cost him, nobody wrote down. The single castle in this whole story that defied the crown is the single castle whose price nobody recorded. Cregan Stark argued. We have that argument almost word for word, which is rarer than it sounds. Small boys become large men in time, and a babe sucks down his mother's hate with his mother's milk. Finish these foes now, or those of us not in our graves in 20 years will rue our folly when those babes strap on their father's swords and come seeking after vengeance. The old man he was arguing with was Corlys Velaryon. King Aegon said the same and died for it. Had he heeded our counsel and offered peace and pardon to his foes, he might be sitting with us here today. And Cregan Stark said the quiet part out loud. Is that why you poisoned him, my lord? That was not an insult thrown in temper. Corlys Velaryon had confessed to conspiring against the king whose death made this peace possible. In that room, the man arguing for mercy was also the man who had helped remove the obstacle to it. Cregan held the capital 6 days. Then he agreed not to march. The record's own word for it is reluctantly. He gave the hand's chain back the morning after he took it, refused a seat on the council that would rule for the boy king, and turned north. His war was over. It had cost him 3 letters and not 1 battle. He went home. More than 1,000 of his Northmen did not. They stayed in the Riverlands. The reasons the record gives have nothing to do with statecraft, and both of them are about food and grief. The lands along the Trident were full of widows, a great many of them with young children and no one to work the land. And the men who had come south were the men a northern household can spare. Younger sons, unwed men, old men, men with no children and no holding. Winter had already been declared. Send them home, and they are mouths. The idea belonged to a woman who had spent the war with a longbow in her hand. Alysanne Blackwood of Reventry Hall, Black Alley. She put it forward that the Northmen stay in the south and help rebuild the Riverlands, and then she made the matches herself. And at the Twins, Lady Sabbatha Frey held fairs of her own, pairing landless Stark soldiers with women the war had widowed. The places the record names are these: Fairmarket, Reventry Hall, River Run, Stony Sept, the Twins. Hundreds of marriages were made, and not one of them has a name. Not a bride, not a groom, not a couple, not a child born afterwards. Hundreds of marriages counted in the aggregate and never once individuated. Whether any of those women had a say in the man she got, no chronicler thought worth the ink. The histories give us 5 places and 2 numbers, and not one human being. And the only Northmen they do name out of all this are the ones who refused to marry and left the country instead. Here is what 1,000 northern men settling in the Riverlands actually did. They made houses Tully and Blackwood, stronger coming out of the war than they had been going in. And they brought their gods with them. South of the Neck, in country that had prayed to the Seven for as long as anyone could remember, people began keeping the old gods again, because they had married into them. A peace that produced weddings instead of sieges. That is the case for the whole thing, in one sentence. Mushroom did not see it that way. He gave it a joke. A wolf for every widow, He will warm her bed in winter and gnaw her bones come spring. And the rest of that army married nobody. Some took service as guards and men-at-arms. Some turned outlaw and stayed. Some went east. Northmen helped found 2 free companies in Essos, one of them all northern, the Wolf Pack, and sailed for cities that were hiring because the Triarchy was coming apart and there was a new war waiting. They left one war and went looking for the next one. One marriage out of all this does have names. The following year, at Winterfell, the sea snake was dead by then. He collapsed on a staircase he had no business climbing. And Alysanne Blackwood came north to marry the wolf, on a betrothal struck in the capital while the executioner was still being argued over. Cregan Stark, back in the capital, on Black Alley. She smells of wood smoke, not of flowers. Her nephew rode up the King's Road to stand witness for her, and the journey took twice as long as it should have. His party was attacked 3 times on the road through snowstorms, and every wedding gift he was carrying was stolen. That is what the peace looked like at ground level. The man who made it could not keep the road to his own wedding clear. They were married in the Godswood, before the Heart Tree. No septon, no 7-pointed star. The northern rite, in the cold, in front of a tree. And then the feast. And at the feast, Cregan Stark's son stood up in a hall full of Northmen and sang a song for his new stepmother. The boy was 4 years old. That is our arithmetic and not the records. The histories give the year he was born and leave the counting to us. His name was Recon. His own mother had died giving birth to him, and he had already been betrothed, by treaty, to a princess who was never born. Remember him. We will come back for him, and it will be a long way from here. So, a man with an army and a grievance wanted 3 castles burned, and he was talked out of it. Was that the moment the realm was saved? Or the moment it was left half-finished? Take the wolf's side first and take it seriously, because nobody has made it better since than he made it in that room. He was not really talking about castles. He was talking about children. Give a boy a dead father and a broken house, and in 20 years he has a sword and a reason. And you will not be there to explain yourself. And look at what the peace actually delivered. The crown promised Johanna Lannister that the Ironborn would go, and gave the order, and the Ironborn stayed. Fair Isle was never recovered. The crown could not clear the King's Road of outlaws for a wedding party. Within the year there were broken men holding Harrenhal, and the force sent to dig them out did not come back. The dance ended. Peace did not arrive. And yet, Cregan Stark's prophecy was about 2 specific babies. Neither of them ever lifted a hand against the Targaryens. One of them never lifted a hand against anybody. We will come back to him. Now, the other side. The old man's answer in that room was the whole case for the peace, and it had a corpse standing behind it. The last king who refused to pardon his enemies died of it, alone, behind the curtains of his own litter. 3 castles said yes. The alternative on the table was 3 sieges, paid for by people who had no vote in the argument. And what the peace produced can be counted. More than 1,000 men who would have been extra mouths through a winter stayed in the Riverlands instead. Hundreds of marriages were made, 2 houses came out stronger, and a religion came back across the neck. And yet, the man making that argument for mercy had confessed to conspiring against the king whose murder made the mercy possible. In that room, peace and poison were the same policy wearing different clothes, and Cregan Stark said so to his face. There is one more thing to say, and it is about who is telling us all this. The loudest voice for the idea that women ended this war belongs to the fool. The great lords would have given us another 2 years of war, it was the women who made the peace. Black Aly, the Maiden of the Vale, the Three Widows, the Dragon Twins. 'Twas them who brought the bloodshed to an end, and not with swords or poison, but with ravens, words, and kisses. That is the thesis of this entire hour. It comes to us from Mushroom, a dwarf fool, in a book set down by a scribe nobody can name, which King Baelor I later had burned. I am not telling you that to throw it away. I am telling you because it is the best sentence anybody wrote about these 6 days, and because that is the shape of the evidence for all of it. And Archmaester Gildan, who gathered every one of these accounts together, never says which side he is on. That is not his habit. In these same chapters, he eulogizes Corlys Velaryon at length. He openly calls other stories he was handed untrustworthy. He has opinions, and he spends them freely. On whether the realm should have burned 3 castles, he wrote down none at all. Nobody in the record argues the wolf was right. Nobody argues he was wrong either. The single loudest argument of the age is the one the Chronicle walks past. So what do I believe? I believe the peace was right, and I do not believe Cregan Stark was a fool for hating it. Those two things sit together more comfortably than they should. He was right that nothing was settled. The West stayed at war, the roads stayed dangerous, the crown could not deliver the one term it sold. He was wrong about the only part he could have changed, which is that burning 3 more castles would have fixed a single one of those things. What I think stopped the killing was 3 people deciding, separately, in 3 different halls, that the child in front of them mattered more than the cause behind them. But if you press me, the one I keep coming back to is the person the histories tell us least about. Elenda Baratheon took the terms. She gave up 3 daughters. She stayed behind her own walls while her children rode to a coronation. And before any of it, she took the one instruction her husband left her and put it aside and gave his son another man's name. Every one of those acts is in the record. The reasons are not. The histories gave us why she took the peace, and for the name, they gave us nothing. Not a word of comment, not a defense, not a complaint. And no chronicler in Westeros wrote down what she looked like. Not her face, not her bearing, not her voice. Whatever face you are looking at right now is ours. Her son was Lord Paramount of the Stormlands from his first breath. No wife, no children, no death. The succession of Storm's End simply picks up again later with somebody else. And if you are reading along in an early printing, you will not even find him under that name. That book calls the boy Oliver. The same book calls his grandfather Royce Caron. Later printings made the son Match. She set aside a king's name for her father's, and the boy she gave it to walked out of the histories before he could speak. So tell me this, Elenda set aside the one instruction her husband left her, with a single name. Right or wrong? Write it in the comments. I read every theory. Next week, the histories turn to the cheapest crowns of the whole war. A gutter knight put a crown on a squire's head. Across the same city, a brothel raised up a boy king of its own. The squire is a boy. He is dragged before the Iron Throne in chains. He asks for no mercy. He asks to be made a knight before he dies. And if these histories have become part of your week, as telling them has become part of mine, like this video, subscribe to Westeros Within, and join me next week for the next chapter of the true history.